This is Eyewitness News Conference, an unrehearsed discussion of the issues of the day. Now, from our WBZ-TV studios in Boston, your moderator, Andy Hiller.
Good afternoon and welcome to Eyewitness News Conference. My name is Chris CONANGLA, in today for Andy Hiller. Last weekend, the Democratic National Committee abolished caucuses that officially recognized 7 groups, including minorities and gays. Also last weekend, Massachusetts Democrats held their convention. A proposed amendment to the party platform recognizing gays as an established affirmative action group in the party was hotly debated and then finally rejected. The question now is, what is the future for gays and minorities in the Bay State's Democratic Party? Our guests today will help answer these questions. They are Jonathan Handel of the Gay and Lesbian Issues Caucus, Joseph Warren, professor of politics at Northeastern University and issues chairman for the Caucus of Minority Democrats, and James Roosevelt, the state's Democratic Party's general counsel and parliamentarian of the state convention. Our panelists include Chris Black from the Boston Globe and Randy Keith from the Quincy Patriot Ledger. And we'll be right back after a short break.
Cautiously optimistic about the future in the Democratic Party at this time.
I have to sound a very different note on the question of inclusiveness at the state level as well as at the national level, both within the Democratic Party and within the state government. The amendment that the Gay and Lesbian Caucus proposed, first of all, to clarify, would not necessarily have given us a state committee member, and that was not the intent of the amendment. That interpretation and the interpretation that it would have required quotas or asking people's sexual preferences or things of that sort are pieces of misinformation or disinformation that were spread, quite frankly, by Governor Caucus and Congressman Atkins. It is that fact, and the fact that the amendment was simply symbolic, that casts this in its purest form as a question of inclusion. Is the signal that the state Democratic Party cares to send to the lesbian and gay community one of openness and inclusion, or is it one of closed-mindedness and exclusion? Unfortunately, the signal that was sent in Springfield, under the direction of the Caucus political machine, armed with walkie-talkies and agendas and political commitments, was to close off the process and to signal that lesbians and gay men were not a welcome part in an active way of the state Democratic Party.
John, do you think, as you know, the House last week added a little rider to the state budget that will prohibit foster children from being placed in gay couples' households? Do you think that the House members were taking a message from the convention? The House is predominantly Democrat. There are just a little more than a dozen Republicans. Were they taking a message from the party leaders? Do you think Caucus was telling them to do this? Or do you think that, in fact, out there, people are basically anti-gay?
Well, I think that the actions of the governor and the chairman in Springfield, combined with the governor's actions on the gay foster parent issue earlier in the week, that led up to the whole controversy, sent a very strong signal to the legislature. And the combination of those things, the message was, it's okay to bash gays. At the national level, I think what we could call it is caucus bashing. At the state level and in the legislature last week, it was very definitely unadulterated gay bashing. The text of that amendment, incidentally, was that you can't place kids in a foster parent situation where the sexual orientation of the foster parents would be detrimental to the welfare of the kids. And then following that was a sentence that said, for the purpose of this section, homosexuality is defined to be a detrimental sexual orientation. I don't think you could ask for it any more clearly.
So what I'm curious, though, is, the House members are supposed to represent their constituents. Do you think that really the feeling out in the hinterlands is that gays should not have a special place in society, that they should not be a minority group, as blacks or women or the poor or whatever are affirmative action groups or minority groups?
Well, indeed, we're not asking for a special place in society. Unfortunately, what gays have right now and lesbians have right now is a special place in society. And it's a place in society where if you walk down the street and you're identifiably gay, or you're holding hands with a lover who you've been with for 10 years or whatever, you're attacked on the street. It's a place in society where if you walk into work and you were on a television program such as this the day before, you may no longer have a job. I myself don't know what the answer to that will be Monday morning. It's a place in society where if you're two women and you want to rent an apartment, you might not get that apartment, and you might not be told why, but you might now. So when people say, you know, gays are asking for a special place in society, I think the argument really is on its head. We've got a special place in society, and that's not the place that we want.
Open to all, and that we encourage participation by all, but that we do not give special status and special preference.
Chris, I think what's very sad is that the Democratic leadership, both in the state and nationally, has allowed the debate to be shaped by Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan and the Republicans have determined the ground of debate, and it is that special interest now means blacks, women, Jews, gays, and labor. It doesn't mean moneyed interests, utility companies, oil companies, and big business, which was what the words meant when I was growing up.
I think if you look at the platform that was adopted out in Springfield, John, and I know you have, it's pretty clear that the special interests that you're talking about, the ones that are detrimental to all Americans, are still the targets of the Democratic Party. I think that you can't say that Ronald Reagan has changed that agenda.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true, because I think that what he has managed to do is make us turn our aim as well against those constituencies that supported the Democratic Party most loyally. The gay and lesbian community votes 70% or more for Democratic candidates. The black community is even higher in its support. And I think that to be looking at those communities and saying, well, this is part of the problem, rather than saying, this is the beginning of the making of a solution, let us return to our roots, let us return to an understanding of what it means to be a Democrat, of what it should mean to be an American, is really a mistake. Jim, when Paul Kurt comes out of a meeting with George Wallace 4 or 5 weeks ago and says the Democratic Party can no longer be the party of fringe issues like gay rights, then I think that the Democratic Party is turning on the people that supported it. It is turning certainly on this constituency group. And I'm not...
Jonathan, though, how can you say that when, I mean, though, it's the right of every advocacy group to push for as much as they can get, but the reality is that the party of Ronald Reagan is hostile to gay people, and Governor Caucus has pledged to sign a gay rights bill. The Democratic Party platform that was adopted did include a very strong gay rights provision. Aren't you, at some point, spiting yourself? I mean, where else do you go if you don't stay within the Democratic Party, and which is certainly more sympathetic?
Certainly, I'm not urging any of us to leave the Democratic Party. I'd be the last person to do that. What I am urging is that the Democratic Party listen to the concerns that the gay and lesbian community is voicing and try to become more receptive to them. We have, as was perhaps pointed out, an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature that earlier this week said that homosexuality is defined as an undesirable or as a detrimental sexual orientation. So I think there's a lot of work that has to be done within the Democratic Party as well as within the Republican Party.
But I wonder how much of that is partisan and how much of it is a reflection of a relatively conservative, in that sense, socially conservative state. This state has a tradition of Puritans and pretty conservative ethnic Catholics. I mean, that's the reality in the state legislature. I think that had more to do with it than any partisan thing. Don't you have to work in society?
Well, certainly, but the Democratic Party is part of the power structure of society. And I think that if you look at all the state legislatures and find that only one of them, the state of Wisconsin, has passed a gay and lesbian civil rights bill, and you look at the fact that there are a lot of Democrats out there in those legislatures, and thank goodness we control most of the legislatures, that the party, whatever position it may be articulating or saying that it has, is not taking that position seriously. If the Democratic Party in this state had a sincere commitment to gay and lesbian civil rights, then why don't we have the bill? Why have we gone 8 years, 10 years without that bill?
Jim, I'm a little curious. You're presumably running for Tip O'Neill's seat. You're a high party official. Tip O'Neill's district, if any district in the state has a large gay population, it's that one. Aren't you just walking away from a lot of votes?
Walking away from votes is certainly not something anybody who's about to run for Congress would like to do, Randy. And I don't think I am walking away from votes. I'm standing very clearly for equal rights for everybody in that district, everybody in Massachusetts, everybody in the United States. I'm saying that there are certain ways that are most effective to protect everybody's rights, and we can disagree on the tactics, even though we agree on the goals.
Will you co-sponsor the Gay and Lesbian Civil Rights Bill in the House if you're elected?
Now, you're talking about
The federal.
the federal. I support gay and lesbian civil rights, yes I do.
So you will co-sponsor that bill if elected?
Of course, I'd want to look at the language of a specific bill, but as a matter of principle, yes.
There, your first campaign promise.
Right.
Your promise, and we are out of time for this segment. Thank all of you for being with us. And once again, I'd like to thank the people who have been my guests this morning. Jonathan Handel,